Hello, my name is Luc Dekens. Today I'm going to give you a short introduction to what the vSphereDSC module is all about. In short, in a few sentences, the vSphereDSC module is providing some DSC-based resources for a vSphere environment. It's something that I started some time ago in the community. I'll first start by giving you a short overview. First, what is DSC for those of you who don't know what it is? I added to the slides, as you can see over there, a short description that you find on the Microsoft websites and documentation. And there are a few keywords in there that are quite important to understand what it is. There's first of all a management keyword in there. So that means you use it to manage environments, not only software but also hardware and all the features that you put on there. On the second thing, it's PowerShell is another keyword, so that means it's integrated in PowerShell since version 4. The real advanced features came in PowerShell WMF 5, so if you start using DSC, you better go to the 5 version. And then another important expression in there is software services. So this is in fact allowing you to do a kind of software-defined data center. It allows you in software to define what you want to have running in your environment. And then the last thing that is quite important in DSC is that it doesn't only configure your configuration, but it also corrects it. So it looks at these configuration files that you defined, and it will correct drift if it discovers it. Oh. This is a short example of a configuration file as you would use it in your environment. In fact, this example, as you see here, there's two important parts, two steps in there. The first one is where we just simply copy a file. In this case, it concerns the PowerCLI installation file. And the second part is where you install actually PowerCLI on a station. As you can see, there is an arguments keyword. That's the one that you would be using if you do a silent install from the command line. So on that level, there's nothing different than what you're used to be using in your environment. Now to come back, Microsoft provided a lot of DSC resources out of the box that come with the WMF 5 to manage their Windows environments. There was nothing there for a vSphere environment, so my idea was in the past to create a community-based DSC resource for a vSphere environment. As you can see at the bottom there, I published this on GitHub, and I'm wanting suggestions, ideas, but also contributions. Don't bother writing down the link. There are some links at the end of the slides of this presentation. What resources are there? So I started off with the quite simple things, things like data center, folders, clusters, data store clusters. As you can see at the bottom of this slide, there is a listing of what currently is available in the release that is on GitHub, but there's a new release coming. As a matter of fact, in the hackathon that we did on Monday evening, together with a team of people that joined me, we tried, and we were nearly there, we tried to add an additional resource. This time we were looking at the alarm resource. The code itself is quite structured and quite easy to do. First of all, I'm using class-based resources, which is different from the classical in WMF 4 PowerShell script resources. In a class-based resource, as you can see in point 2, there are 3 basic steps that you need to do for each DSC resource. That's the set, test, and get. The test is the critical first step that you do when you check for, or what the LCM manager uses. It will check if what you specified is actually there. If it's not, it will go to the set method, and it will actually implement this new resource in your environment. Under number 1, you see all the properties that you have to provide to define such a resource. And then in the third block of code, that's a bit more expanded code that you would need to implement the resource. Now, due to some issues that we currently still have, and partially it's due to the fact that PowerCLI until recently was PS snap-ins, and the fact that the DSC class-based resources don't support those yet, I had to move all the parts that actually use the PowerCLI commandlets. I had to move them to a separate PS1 file. And you see an extract of one function in there. It is the one that will create a data center in your environment. As you can see, highlighted area around line 549, that's the one where you will actually be creating your data center. So that code is in fact nearly the same as what you would have in your regular scripts where you define stuff in your vSphere environment. Now, what environment did I start with? It was a quite complex environment, as you can see on the schematic on the slide here. I set it up for an Active Directory environment. That's due to the authentication. There was a pooled server. That's the one that is providing the module and the configuration files to the target agents. I had a vEngine agent server, sorry. That is the one that was actually talking via PowerCLI to your vSphere environment, because you won't be, or you don't want to install an LCM agent on your vCenter. Plus, this also covers the fact if you're using vCSA, there are already LCM agents for Linux, but they're not advanced enough to do what I wanted to do with the vSphereDSC module. And ultimately, you needed a workstation to edit your code, but also your configuration files. So this was quite complex. If people wanted to set this up in their own home lab, it required a bit of work. What I did is I tried to simplify this environment. So I now went for a standalone server, as you can see on this drawing, and it only contains the pooled server and the vEngine. So the pooled server is the one, if you remember, that has the modules and the resource definitions, and the vEngine is the one that actually talks through PowerCLI to your vSphere environment. We don't use Active Directory in this environment. It's simplified, it's non-authenticated, so see my remark in the notes there, don't use this in your production or even in your pre-production environment. It's development only. But it makes it a lot simpler. You can now run this standalone server, and I did this during the hackathon. I ran it on a VMware workstation on my service, and that worked without a glitch. Now on the community, first of all, I need community contributions. As you know, vSphere is a very complex environment. I added already, like I also said, some basic resources in there, but there are so many that I will never be able to cover them all. So I need coders, that's one thing, but I also need, as I mentioned there, under issues, feel free to enter new suggestions, ideas, or even resources that you would need in a first instance to start using this in your environment. So go to the GitHub repository and use the issue part there to start entering your contributions. Code, of course, is also welcome. I'm not the one that's going to write all of this. There are some links here which I entered. There's the first one, that is the one pointing to the GitHub. I did some posts, and in the post you have more explanation of what I'm actually doing, how the code is set up. So have a read of those. If there are questions about what I've written there, feel free to post them as a comment or use the issues section in the GitHub repository. There is, and Microsoft is going open, as you know, quite recently, not only with PowerShell, but also with their documentation. So the complete DSC documentation that they're providing is also open. It's based on a GitHub repository. They made a publication, that's the third link that you see in there. There you will find all the basic DSC documentation on how to do, how to set up pool servers, but also how to create configuration files. And then there's two Microsoft Virtual Academy courses, which are quite interesting. They have been done by Jeffrey Snover, the master, and Jason Helmick. There's a Getting Started with DSC, and there's a more advanced one that explains to you how you can write additional custom-based resources. Most of that is based on scripted resources, but there are some points where they discover class-based resources. That was it. Thank you for and don't forget to contribute. They are more than welcome.